Well, good afternoon. I'm Leon Davis, and you are listening to Altitude Adjustment. Today, I want to talk about management and leadership, and we're going to do that starting right now.
Welcome to Altitude
Adjustment. So, um, when I originally started to put material together for this podcast, it was about management, and then one of the people that I work with, Warren, mentioned leadership and management actually kind of go hand in hand. And so I've um, modified it a little to include management. Give me a second here. Back in a previous life, I was a manager, and I had an excess of 40 employees that I was responsible for. There were a lot of things that I got to learn about being a manager and doing the job that I was doing. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was an opportunity to work with some really great people. And I kind of miss it. But I've moved on to a lot of different other things, and I've picked up some additional skills. When I was in management, there was this X versus Y theory. That was management by intimidation versus management by cooperation. A lot of managers were using fear and uh, threats and of that nature to keep employees off balance, to be able to get them to do what they wanted them to do. And then there was the idea of working with cooperation, and that's building a team, getting buy-in from the employees. And I learned the word buy-in as I've come along later in life. Um, Part of my business consulting, small business consulting skills that I've adapted to. But there's the team building and the idea of working together to accomplish a goal. While I was doing research for this topic, I ran across a poll by Gallup. It was dated 2014, and Gallup concluded that companies failed to choose the candidate with the right talent for the job on 82% of the time. Now, Gallup has studied the performance of hundreds of organizations and measured the engagement of 27 million employees and more than 2.5 million work units over the past 2 decades. And the study actually used the data, I think, for a longer period than that. And this was across all industry sectors. Also, the research revealed that about 1 in 10 people possess the talent to manage. And management or leadership is a talent. It comes more natural for some, but it is a talent, and it is. And well, I'll go on because they part of the report made it appear that they were saying that managing was innate, that it was more built into the person rather than something that a person learned or picked up. And I have some disagreements with that, and I'll get to those in just a second. Gallup finds that great managers have the following talents. They motivate every single employee to action and engage employees with a compelling mission or vision. They have the assertiveness to drive outcomes and the ability to overcome adversity and resistance. So these managers basically create their own success. They also create a culture of clear accountability. They build relationships that create trust, open dialogue, and full transparency. They make decisions based on productivity and not on politics. And I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the different management styles or several different management styles that I've encountered. When I was looking up management styles, it mostly revolved around 5 or 7, between 5 and 7. Most of the places that I visited talked about 5 of the different. And what I think it actually comes down to is between the X and the Y. Most management styles are either the manager is driving everything, or the manager is accomplishing everything through employees. The study basically says the managers are born and not made, which is what I mentioned earlier. And with some, but they did talk about that some of the skills can be adapted, or some of the managers can adapt to different skills. So my definition, or my explanation of a manager and what a manager's responsibility is a manager has to, and what I was taught, a manager has to eliminate their position. And what that means is a manager should manage with the idea that they're eliminating their job. They train their employees to think for themselves, to respond, to react, to accomplish without having to have oversight, or someone constantly edging them on or checking up on them, or to give them a sense of what the team is trying to accomplish, how they're part of that team, and how their behavior and their efforts help make the team successful. And part of that is, and going back to the 82% of bad selection for management, is that team selection is a huge part of a manager's success. Yes, you want to take employees, whoever comes through the door, whoever walks in is able to accomplish the job, but also you want what you may hear a lot about is corporate culture, or the culture of the company. And so like IBM was suit and tie, white shirt, black tie, way back when. I'm sure things may be a little different now, but it was black shirt, white tie. And hold on a second here, got something going on. I'll have to do it later. So anyway, it was black shirt, white tie. That was the culture. You lived within those parameters. You did those kinds of. So they were pretty strict on certain behaviors for a long time. Shirt and tie was management. Managers wore shirts and ties. And long sleeve shirts at that. It wasn't short sleeve shirts, because it was considered too casual to wear a short sleeve shirt. But that sets up or makes up the culture within the company. The company decides what kind of environment that they want to keep, and then the employee fits into that environment. So when choosing employees, it is important to make sure that you pick people that are going to thrive in that environment, or at least prepare them to thrive in that environment. So the actual managing of employees starts even before they sign on with the company. It's that whole interview process is about making sure that you're going to find someone that is going to be successful in your environment and help you become successful as a company. Now, I tend to not think that managing is about managing employees, about making someone do a job, or it's about providing an environment for someone to flourish. You manage situations and not people. And I'll explain real quick. Most employees, and there are several studies out there, I can't point to anyone now, but and I usually like to be very thorough, but there were studies over and over that say employees usually are self-motivated. They usually want to do a good job. They want the opportunity to perform and excel because it benefits them to do that. So as a manager, you don't have to try to motivate them. You don't have to try to instill in them company loyalty and all of those kinds of things. They come with that. And your job as a manager is to give them the materials and the resources and the time that they need to develop into the best them that they want to be. They can then achieve for you. I'm going to hold that onto that, and we'll talk more about some of the management styles and how they affect or impact employees, which is really important. Also, one of the things that I was taught is that as a manager, your responsibility was to train your replacement. That doesn't mean you were going to leave and they brought in someone and then you had to train that replacement. You couldn't get a promotion if there wasn't someone in your team that could take over. So it was your responsibility to prepare so that the team performance does not degrade because you move on. Because the company benefits by you making sure that there's consistency. One of the most important things in success is, I had the word right onto my tongue, but it's that consistency. It's that there's not upheaval and constant turmoil going on in a department or in a company, but as long as everyone knows what is expected of them, as long as everyone is aware of how to get done what they need to get done, the company benefits from that because more people can step up and be able to achieve. And the more people that you have that can achieve, the more successful the company is going to be. And then employee retention. I think a manager's responsibility is employee retention. If a manager has fired 2 or more people, I am concerned about that manager, because in the management in the selection process, you have to determine who's going to fit into your environment and then give them the opportunity to be successful in that environment. Are you totally responsible for the success of that employee in that environment? Of course not. But you are majority of the effort is on you to make sure that that employee is successful in an environment, because the training and the time it takes to replace that employee and all of the things that go into getting employee up to speed and being productive in a company is expensive. And if you have a large turnover, if you're constantly turning over people, then you're constantly draining resources that can be used in other departments, in other functions. So as a good manager, your responsibility is to make that employee successful, make every employee in your stead successful. So those are 3 things that I think are really important in a good leader and a good manager. If you look at your employees or your coworkers as corporate capital, and that was mentioned to me once, and it rang clear as a bell. Employees are corporate capital. There are a lot of cultures or a lot of environments that look at employees as parts on a machine to be replaced. If you don't fit, I'll get someone else to do the job. And companies benefit from having employees stay for long periods of time, because we spend billions of dollars training employees on jobs. And every time an employee moves on changes, leaves, gets terminated, we lose that. Pardon me. We lose that investment in their training, in their pardon me. We lose that investment in their training and the time that we spent to developing that part, and it impacts the team. Every time when a team gets settled, when a team builds and becomes productive, they become a unit. It's no longer several individuals, it is now a team. They're one. And they bond in certain ways, though one person may not associate well with everyone on the team. They have all learned how to coexist and achieve. And when you start to change the dynamic of the team, you change the team's ability to achieve, because people on the team know what to expect from one another. They know that maybe this person isn't going to carry 50 boxes in a day. So when another person on the team steps up, carries 52 boxes, then the one person can only have to carry 48 boxes. But they learn to work together. They learn to get the job done. When you play with that mix, or when you change that mix, you move a new person in, then the team has to go through rebuilding that synergy all over again, almost from scratch, unless maybe it's somebody that's within the company that has had some work in that department. But they have to do that all over again and build that team synergy. Try to not to use words that are too I don't know, it's a businessy. There was this thing a while back, but anyway, the team energy, the team ability, cohesiveness, is what you want. And every time you change the team, you change that. Now, the drawback to that is when you have a team that works so well together, it then becomes a little difficult to, depending on how the team is structured and how flexible the team is, to make any real changes. So it's hard to make drastic changes, like you're going to take a completely different direction, because they bonded as a group. And when you make those changes, if you haven't done your change management, you're in for a real rough ride. The seas are going to be choppy. But once you have those units working together, you can pretty much move them anywhere, because it's about relationships. It's about how they work and interact together. And once they are comfortable with each other and everybody understands what's going on, you can give them any kind of work you want to give them, and they'll get it done as a team. So I talked earlier about X and Y, and so I'll quickly go over a couple of different management styles under the X and Y. I like the X and Y, and I don't hear too many people use it anymore. But they talk about the authoritarian management style or the command and control management style, and that relies on strict hierarchy. Management orders or employees obey. Disobedient employees are punished to ensure fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They use that doubt, that inability, and I talked earlier about team being cohesive, about they're working together, they build synergy. The authoritarian doesn't want that synergy, because if a new manager comes in, let's say they don't promote from within the team, they bring a new manager in, a team that's cohesive is going to, a new manager coming in trying to rewrite the rule books is going to have a difficult time if they don't get in and deal with the relationships first. If you're not a part of that team, if the team doesn't see you as productive or effective or being able to bring value to the team, you are in for trouble. So when by keeping teams from being cohesive, you can move management in and out and in and out. But the one thing that's going to be an issue is you're always going to have turnover, because when a team don't have that cohesiveness, there's no reason for people to stay. Most people will take less money to be in an environment where they're happy and productive every day. Managers using this tactic on their subordinates try to instill that fear. They want to use guilt and shame to shame their team into compliance. This includes micromanagers, and everyone has probably worked for a micromanager at some point in their time. They use power and control. Employees are forced into rigid structures, and they have to conform to management's ideas. They're not usually allowed to contribute or help in policy making or directions of the company. And then the other side is you have managers that their whole job is to get the best out of their employees by giving their employees a stake in how the company runs, how the department functions, how products are delivered, how feedback on how to make things better. What a lot of times I've seen is, because I worked in this environment where a rule comes to our department. This is a rule you've got to follow. And the first thing that everyone has a problem with is we're working with this every day. We're doing this job every day. And the rule that you sent down not only makes it more difficult to get done, it's incohesive with the things that you've asked us to do from before, because they did not consult the people actually doing the work. They may have looked at a flow chart. They may have gotten information from someone else that says this is what happens in this environment and this is how you can fix this environment. So they make that rule, and then there's this period of adjustment because they don't do change management. If you don't prepare employees for things that you have coming, then they're going to push back. That's just a natural part of it. People get comfortable in situations because they know how to function. They know how to avoid being in trouble. But when you throw in confusion, then they don't know how to avoid trouble. They don't know how to avoid difficulties. So they become difficult, not by intent, but just by defense. A couple of other types of management styles is the fatherly type, where a more motherly type, where the manager wants to save everybody, wants to fix everyone's problems, and forget that it's a work environment. I'm going to have to cut it off there just so I can meet my timeline. I will probably pick this up at another time. It's a topic that's really important for me, but I do encourage managers and employees to realize that they can work together, and that everyone has something to offer that can be useful to the company, and themselves. Let me leave it on this. Without the ability to influence subordinates toward goal achievement, a manager cannot be effective. No matter how well crafted the objectives or how well organized the resources, nothing can be achieved if employees are unwilling or unable to work toward objectives. Managers who lack the ability to influence subordinates are often ineffective and find it difficult to motivate their workers to increase productivity. News for the week. Former Army Infantry Albert Wong killed 3 women in the nation's largest veterans home in California before killing himself. The bodies of the gunman and the 3 women he took hostage were found by officers around 6 p.m. on Friday. The women were employees of the nonprofit organization Pathway Home Treatment Program, which is housed on the Veterans Home campus. Wong was a former PTSD patient at the facility before being kicked out of the program. A college professor tells an Asian American couple to go back to your home country. A woman identified in a video as Taryn Olson is a professor and counselor at Golden West College in Huntington Beach, California. She has currently been placed on a 2-week leave, and the college has said it does not condone the professor's actions. Mostly positive FEMA reports under former President Obama have been removed. As reported by USA Today, the government watchdog for the Federal Emergency Management Administration has removed a dozen largely positive reports evaluating FEMA's performance under President Obama to several disasters between 2012 and 2016. The 12 reports were rescinded by the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General because they, quote, may have not adequately answered the objectives and in some cases may have lacked sufficient and appropriate evidence to support conclusions, unquote. And that's quoted from an internal memo issued Thursday. The memo also contains the following, quote, in an abundance of caution, we believe it is best to recall the reports and not reissue them. Links to these stories and links to these stories will be included in the comments section. That is it for today. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to join me. You can replay the video podcast here on YouTube. The audio podcast is available on Stitcher.com, Podcast.com, the iTunes Store, and the Google Music Play Store. The internet is powered by your likes, shares, and comments. Like and share this video where you find it, and consider leaving a comment because it really does matter. As always, be cool, be calm, but above all, be careful. Look out for the other guy because they may not be looking out for you.